That constant tension in your chest, that racing mind at 3 in the morning, that feeling that something is fundamentally wrong with reality. You've been told it's a disorder. You've been told to medicate it away, to breathe through it, to manage it like some kind of malfunction. But what if I told you that your anxiety isn't a problem to be solved? What if your anxiety is actually a sign that you're finally waking up? Alan Watts spent his entire life trying to explain something that Western psychology completely missed. Anxiety is not illness, it's awareness. The very thing you're trying to escape might be the doorway to your liberation. Today, we're going to dismantle everything you thought you knew about that restless feeling inside you. We'll explore why the anxious mind sees what the comfortable mind ignores, why society needs you to believe you're broken, and what happens when you finally stop fighting the awakening that's already happening inside you. The Great Deception. Here's a truth that the pharmaceutical industry doesn't want you to hear. Alan Watts recognized something profound about the modern epidemic of anxiety. He saw that we've created a society built on an illusion, a collective dream that requires constant maintenance to sustain. The illusion is simple but devastating. You are a separate self, isolated in a bag of skin, fighting against a hostile universe for survival and success. This belief, this fundamental assumption that Western civilization runs on, is completely false. And here's the thing about living inside a lie. A person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts, so he loses touch with reality. Your anxiety isn't a chemical imbalance. It's the friction between your true nature and the artificial construct you've been trained to inhabit. Every anxious thought is a signal, a whisper from your deeper self saying this isn't real, this isn't you, something fundamental is off. The problem isn't that you're feeling this friction. The problem is that you've been convinced the friction is the malfunction, when actually it's the first sign of clarity cutting through the fog. But this raises an uncomfortable question that most people refuse to face. The prison of ego. Watts spent decades studying Eastern philosophy, and he discovered something that Western psychology still struggles to accept. The ego, that voice in your head that you call yourself, is not who you actually are. It's a construction, a social fiction, a role you learned to play so well that you forgot you were playing it. Think about this for a moment. When you're anxious, who exactly is anxious? You'll say I am, but that I is itself the source of the problem. Ego creates separation. The ego exists by creating boundaries, by constantly reinforcing the illusion that you are here and everything else is out there, threatening you. This is why anxiety is so persistent. It's not a bug in the system. It's the system working exactly as designed. The ego survives by keeping you in a state of chronic vigilance, of perpetual not-enoughness, of endless future worry and past regret. If this is starting to shift something inside you, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring these depths of the psyche with me, because what we're about to uncover goes even deeper into the mechanism of awakening that's already happening inside you. Society's trap. Now here's where it gets truly disturbing. Watts understood that society doesn't just accidentally make people anxious. It requires anxiety to function. Think about the structure of modern life. Work harder, earn more, buy more. Compare yourself to others. Plan obsessively for a future that never arrives. Be afraid of death. Be afraid of failure. Be afraid of what others think. The entire system runs on your fear. If people actually woke up, if they actually realized that they are not separate egos struggling against the universe, but rather expressions of the universe itself, the whole game would collapse. Who would work 70-hour weeks at a job they hate? Who would buy things they don't need to impress people they don't like? Who would spend their lives chasing a satisfaction that's always one achievement away? Your anxiety is dangerous to the system, not because it's a disorder, but because it's a form of rebellion. Your nervous system is screaming that something is fundamentally wrong with how you've been taught to live. We suffer from a hallucination, from a false and distorted sensation of our own existence. And that hallucination is exactly what keeps the machinery of consumption and conformity running. But there's something even more unsettling about this trap. The eternal now. Watts pointed to something that anxiety makes almost impossible to see. The present moment, this eternal now, is the only reality that actually exists. Your anxiety lives in time, in the gap between what is and what you think should be. It projects into futures that haven't happened and replays pasts that are already gone. But here's the cosmic joke: the future never arrives. When tomorrow comes, it's always today. When next year comes, it's always now. You are perpetually trapped in the present moment whether you like it or not. The anxious mind refuses to accept this. It keeps trying to escape the now, to prepare for something, to solve something, to achieve something that will finally allow it to relax. But that moment of arrival never comes, because arrival would mean the death of the ego's endless project of self-improvement and self-protection. Surrender, that's the word Watts used. Not surrender as defeat, but surrender as the relaxation of a cramp, the releasing of a grip you didn't even know you were holding. The anxious person is constantly clenching, constantly bracing for an impact that exists only in thought. This reveals a paradox that most people can't wrap their minds around. The cosmic game. Here's where Watts becomes truly radical. He proposed that existence itself is a kind of game, a play, what the Hindus call Leela. The universe is not a serious problem to be solved, but a dance to be danced, a game to be played. Life is play, not war. And you, with your anxious mind, you've forgotten that you're playing. Imagine an actor who gets so absorbed in their role that they forget they're acting. They suffer the character's suffering as if it were real. They fear the character's fears as if the stakes were actual. That's the human condition according to Watts. You are the universe pretending to be a separate person, getting completely lost in the performance. Your anxiety is what happens when part of you starts to remember. It's the actor beginning to sense that the stage isn't the whole world, that the costume isn't their actual skin. This remembering is terrifying to the ego because the ego is the role, the character. When you start waking up, the ego experiences it as death. You are something the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is something the whole ocean is doing. But this understanding leads to something that sounds completely counterintuitive at first: embracing chaos. Western psychology tells you to manage your anxiety, to control it, to fight it with techniques and medications. Watts said something radically different. Stop fighting. The very act of fighting anxiety is what keeps it alive. What you resist not only persists, but grows stronger. Think about what happens when you try not to be anxious. You become anxious about being anxious. You create a second layer of suffering on top of the first, and then you become anxious about that. It's an infinite regression of resistance creating more of what you're trying to eliminate. Watts proposed something that sounds almost irresponsible to modern ears. Let the chaos be. Don't try to order it. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to understand it intellectually. Just be present with it as it is. The mind cannot control what it is made of. This is not passivity. This is not giving up. This is the recognition that the controller and the controlled are the same thing. You cannot get out of a trap if your method of escape is itself part of the trap. The ego trying to fix the ego is like a dog chasing its own tail, infinite activity going absolutely nowhere. But this leads us to something even more transformative: the gateless gate. In Zen Buddhism, they speak of the gateless gate, a barrier that isn't actually there. Your anxiety is standing guard at a door that doesn't exist, protecting you from a danger that was never real. The only thing keeping you trapped is the belief that you are trapped. Watts loved this paradox because it points to something words cannot capture. You cannot effort your way to awakening because effort itself is the problem. You cannot think your way out of thought because thinking is the maze. You cannot use the ego to transcend the ego because the ego is who you think you are. So what can you do? Nothing. And that's the answer. Not nothing as in giving up, but nothing as in stopping the constant doing, the constant fixing, the constant becoming. Stop trying to become. You already are what you're looking for. The awakening you're seeking is what's looking through your eyes right now, reading these words. The consciousness that's aware of your anxiety is already free from it. It's the sky that doesn't fight the clouds but simply allows them to pass through. This realization has profound implications for how you approach everything in your life. Awakened living. So what does this mean practically? How do you actually live once you understand what Watts was pointing at? First, you stop pathologizing your experience. Your anxiety is not proof that something is wrong with you. It might be proof that something is right with you, that you're sensitive enough, aware enough, to feel the friction of living in a world that's fundamentally out of touch with reality. Second, you begin to question the questioner. Every time anxiety arises, instead of trying to solve whatever it's about, you turn attention to who is anxious, who is the one suffering, who is the one afraid. When you look for this one, you find nothing, nothing solid, nothing permanent, nothing separate from the awareness that's doing the looking. Third, you start to play instead of fight. The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. Life becomes less of a problem to solve and more of a mystery to participate in. Your anxiety becomes interesting rather than threatening. You get curious about it rather than terrified of it. But there's one more crucial understanding that ties this all together: death of control. At the root of all anxiety is the desperate need for control. Control over your thoughts, your feelings, your circumstances, your future, other people's perceptions of you. This need for control is the ego's survival strategy, and it never, ever works completely. Freedom, that's what the death of control really means. Watts watched people spend their entire lives trying to get reality to match their mental images of how things should be, and failing, and suffering, and trying harder, and failing again. He saw the absurdity of it, the cosmic comedy of beings who are literally made of the universe trying to control the universe. You cannot control what you fundamentally are. The anxious person lives in perpetual warfare with what is. They're fighting the present moment in the name of some imaginary future where everything will finally be okay. But that future is a mirage, always receding, never arriving. When you truly see this, something relaxes. Not because you've finally gotten control, but because you've stopped needing it. Control is the illusion. You realize that you were never the one in control anyway, that the sense of being a controller was itself just another appearance in consciousness, another cloud passing through the sky. This brings us to the ultimate truth that Watts spent his life trying to communicate. The final truth. Here's what Watts ultimately discovered, and what your anxiety might be trying to show you. 1. You are not separate from the universe. 2. Your true nature is already free. 3. Awakening is not achievement but recognition. 4. The search is what prevents the finding. The anxious mind is actually closer to the truth than the comfortable mind. It senses that the game is rigged, that the promises of society are empty, that there must be something more than this endless cycle of desire and temporary satisfaction. The problem is not that you're feeling these things. The problem is that you've been interpreting them as signs of illness rather than signs of health. This is the real secret of life: to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now. And instead of calling it work, realize it is play. Your anxiety is the universe waking up to itself through you. It's uncomfortable because birth is uncomfortable. Something is dying, the illusion of separation, and something is being born, the recognition of what you always already were. Not anxious anymore, awake. So the next time that familiar tension arises in your chest, the next time your mind races with worry, consider this possibility. You're not broken. You are waking up. Alan Watts spent his life pointing at a truth that cannot be put into words, only lived. The anxiety you've been fighting is not your enemy. It's a messenger trying to deliver news that your ego doesn't want to hear. You are not who you think you are. You are something infinitely more vast, more free, more at peace than the frightened, separate self you've been performing. The question is not how to get rid of anxiety. The question is what happens when you stop running from what it's trying to show you. If you made it this far, comment "awake" now if this shifted something fundamental in your perception. You are the universe experiencing itself. Welcome to the Psyche Project. If this gave you something to think about, subscribe for more. Understanding yourself is the work of a lifetime.